All right, it's that moment we've all been waiting for. Welcome to our weekly Daf Yomi Shir. This week, we are live on Zoom as always, and we are going to be doing page 79 of Masechet Shabbat, Daf Ayin Tet. So come one, come all, tune in, pick up a book, or have a look on the screen, because we are going to share it right over here. So while I get it up on your screen, why don't I fill you in a little bit on what's been going on? We are talking in the Gemara about different things that you might want to carry on Shabbos. And what we are going through at the moment is how much do you have to be carrying to actually violate the malacha? How much do you have to be carrying? If you've got a piece of dust in your hand, is that going to be enough? And so what we're seeing is that the amount varies for different items, and it all depends on how useful they are. You're only going to be violating the malacha of Hotzah for carrying out different things if what you are carrying is of some use to somebody at some point in time. And so that would vary for each and every different type of thing that you are looking to carry out. So we are coming to the point now in the Gemara at the top of page 79 where we want to know how much animal hide you would need to be carrying out before that was of any use to anybody. I'm just trying to find it in the Mishnah over here, but the amount that the Gemara comes to is, so we are 6 lines down if we're looking inside the book, and if we are looking on the page, can everybody see the page? Excellent. And I've just found it in the Mishnah originally. Good, excellent. So the point at which we're coming to is how much animal hide, and the Mishnah told us it has to be enough to make an amulet. We've encountered amulets before when we were talking about amulets that they would basically be little pieces of parchment or whatever, and they would have an inscription on them. They would be written by a professional, or hopefully a professional kind of spiritual medical professional who was proficient in the ways of having these amulets made that when the wearer would wear them, it would protect them from illness or heal them from illness or give them some kind of extra bracha in their lives, whatever it might be. And we've encountered them before when we've been talking about ones which work and ones which don't. But anyway, so we come to a point now where the pouch that you would put your amulet in would be made out of animal hide. And the Mishnah is saying that you would have to be carrying out this small amount. That's the minimum size for something made out of animal skin that would be useful for a person to use. All right, so that's where we come to. So the beginning word there, or kadei la'asot kameya, doesn't say the word kameya because it just references the Mishnah, but that's what we're talking about. Enough animal hide to be able to make a pouch to contain the text of the amulet. So that's where the Gemara picks up from today. So Bo'amine Rava me Rav Nachman. So Rava asked a question to Rav Nachman, and he said like this: Amotzi or Bakama. How much animal hide must one be carrying out on Shabbos? Amalei, the response that he got, Kiditz none. We've learnt it in the Mishnah, haven't we? Or Kadei Lasos Kameya. It must be enough to be able to make an amulet. Then it continues. Ama'avda Bakama. He asked him the question, when it comes to tanning hide, right, it has to go through a whole process, which we're actually going to look at more, we're actually going to look at the process of tanning more in depth today. But the question was asked, so how much tanning, how much animal hide must you have to be working on before you violate the malacha of tanning? So the Gemara tells us, Amalei, he said back, Loshna, doesn't make a difference. It's the same amount, enough to be working on an animal pouch, enough to be making on an amulet pouch. So then he continues, Le'avdo tanan, with regards to one who is tanning it, Bekama. He asked, how much is it? Amalei loshna. It is no difference. It is the same. It is the same shiur, enough to make a pouch for an amulet. Minat Tamra. So where do you get this from? There's no difference in size between one who's carrying out a piece of leather or one who is working on a piece of leather. How do we know it's the same size? So what it's going to bring now is a Mishnah, and it's going to compare two different types of processes. One with regards to making material for sewing clothes and garments, and then it's going to compare it to our topic of preparing animal hides, and it's going to what's the word? Postulate. That's a great word for a Sunday morning. It's going to postulate that because we would talk about the same size for making garments, we therefore say the same size about animal hides as well. So let's take a look. Kiditnam, because it says in the Mishnah, Hamalabin, one who bleaches wool to be able to turn it into material. Vahamanape, one who combs wool to straighten it out and get it ready for spinning. Vahatsovea, one who dyes wool into a particular color. Vahatove starts to spin the wool into thread. Shiuro kamale rochev hasit kaful. What is the minimum size of usefulness that if you were to start doing these processes on Shabbos, you would then be liable for having done the malacha? So it tells us that you have to start working on a piece that is double the full width of the distance between the forefinger and the middle finger. If I'm not mistaken, that's the forefinger and that is the middle finger. So twice as long as that, which I guess would be that long. So that's how much it says you would have to be working on when it comes to working with threads. When it comes to weaving two threads together, it's also that distance. So they make the following logical extension. If that is the amount that we are saying you would be chayav for if you were doing any of these different processes for preparing thread, so we're going to have the same measurement applied also when it comes to working with animal hide. So it has one measurement for working with material, and it has another measurement working with animal hides. But the fact that these processes are bunched together and given one size fits all, right? So we say the same for animal hide as well. So that is the premise of the Gemara at this point. So the Gemara asks, are we here? Let me just find it in the English. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So how much, if you're not working on it, you're not tanning on it, you're not tanning the material, so how much would you have to be carrying out to be liable for a korban? Amalei loshna. He said the measurement is the same, it makes no difference. So the Gemara asks, does it make no difference between whether you are carrying out hides which you are tanning and hides which you are not tanning? And so now what we're going to be doing is bringing different examples from different kind of processes where we see that the sizes are not necessarily the same. So stick with me. Some of this stuff is it's very techno-friendly if you happen to be living 2,000 years ago. So let's try and work out what some of these things are talking about. A survey. We have a challenge to this. We are taught that one who is carrying out herbs that we are using to create dye. Okay, so they would take different herbs and they would mix them with hot water, and that would create a color that they could then use to dye different fabrics, right? That as I said, techno-friendly. So how much would you have to be carrying out? So the Gemara tells us the amount that you would need to be able to dye a sample of wool. If you needed a small amount as a sample for something, so then That is the minimum size that you would have to be carrying out before you are chayav. Ve'ilu b'siman she'enan shuriyan. And if it was herbs that were not being soaked, so then we've learned a different amount. T'nan, it's taught. Klipe goes in when it comes to nutshells, the klipe rimonim, and it comes to pomegranate rinds. Satis when it comes to okay, it translates it there as safflower. Upua, which it translates there as madder, which I'm sure you will get it. Kedeli tzbar bahen beged katan, enough to be able to dye a small amount, a small piece of fabric. Lefi svacha, the size of a woman's hairnet. Now that would sound like it's a bit bigger, doesn't it? Ha'it ma'ala amar Rav Nachman amar Rabba bar Avuha lefi she'ein adam torach lishros simonim nitzbar bahen dugma le'ira. So it was taught over there that the reason why the sizes are different is because you wouldn't actually go to all of that trouble to soak herbs just to be able to dye such a small sample size. So that is why, that is the response over here. We brought a challenge and we said, hang on a minute, why are we saying that when it comes to the same processes that it's always the same? You know, we see over here that when it comes to dyeing herbs, if you want to be able to dye herbs, then it's enough to dye this very small sample. But if you're talking about herbs that are not being carried around, then it's a bigger size. So why is it different over there and it's not different over here? And the reason is because you would never actually, it's not a useful size if you're not soaking it for dye. You would never go to the trouble of soaking herbs just to be able to dye that small amount. So that is why it is not an effective challenge at this point. But that's all right, because we're going to bring another one. Bahari Zironagina. What about seeds that you're planting in the garden? Demakmi Dezarinhu, before you've actually sown them. So we've learned in the Mishnah, Tanan, Zironagina, Pachos Mikragagres, that when it comes to carrying out seeds of garden plants, there is an amount that's less than a kagrogeres, which is a dried fig. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Chamisha, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says he is liable if he carries out 5 seeds, because according to him, that would be the minimum amount that you would need. Ve'ilu basar dezarinu, but when we're talking about carrying out seeds after he has sown them, then we learned in the Mishnah, zevel, fertilizer, v'chol, and sand. It translates as fine. Oh, sorry, yeah, v'chol hadak, fine sand. Kedei lezava bo klach shel karub. It's enough to be able to fertilize 1 stalk of cabbage. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, according to the words of Rabbi Akiva. Chachamim say kedei lezava krisha. It's enough to be able to fertilize a. Okay, translates it as a leek over there. Itma Allah, our Papa, Hadizriya, and over there Rav Papa taught us, and he stated with regards to this, that there's a difference. Because one is Dizriya, that one is where you have planted it, the Hadallah Dizriya, and one is where you haven't planted it. And it's going to be the same principle again as to why the sizes are different. And the reason is, Hadallah, and the reason is because a person is not going to carry out, a person is not going to go to the trouble of carrying out 1 single seed just to be able to sow, right? However, one may come to carry out 1 seed after it's already been sown. So that is why there is a difference again in the sizes of these things. So 2 challenges so far. Both of them are not good enough to push aside our halacha. So then the Gemara adds, he asked further, okay, Bahari tit, what about clay? The mikame deligable, before he has started to work with it and mold it into shapes. So let's have a look. I've lost my place. Tanya, it was taught in a Baraisa, Modim Chachamim Rabbi Shimon, that the sages agreed to Rabbi Shimon, but Motzi Shofkin, that when it comes to the amount of wastewater that you would be carrying out, that the amount that you would have to be carrying out is a revius. And we ask the question in that particular area, we say, well, what use does wastewater even have? Rabbi Yirmiyah replies, it's enough to be able to use to start working with clay? Okie dokie. But when it comes to clay after it has been worked with, Tanya, we learn, it's a much smaller size. Once you have got clay that you have worked on, then the amount that you would need to be carrying out is enough to be able to make this very small hole for a crucible for, I think, melting gold or making gold objects, right? So it's a much smaller size. So hang on a minute. When it comes to finished clay, or, when it comes to a clay item, then it's a small size of this opening to be able to put on the crucible for smelting gold. Okay. But then if I was carrying out wastewater, then surely the size should be the amount of wastewater needed, N-E-E-D, to need, K-N-E-A-D, this amount of clay. But we're saying it's a bigger amount, it's a revius, which is a slightly larger amount. So why is there a difference over there? So can you see it's the same kind of question? The Gemara answers, Hasam Nami. It's the same thing that we've been saying all along. Because no one is going to bother taking just enough water to be able to put it together to make this tiny amount of clay. And so that is why the sizes, again, are different, because we're talking about one point of the process where the amount is useful, and we're talking about the end of the process, which might be smaller, but you're not going to bother with the small amount at the beginning of the process, and that's why the two sizes are different. Okie dokie. Continues the Gemara. Tashma, the moment we've all been waiting for. How do you tan animal hides? Okay, Tashma says in the Baraisa, the Amar Rabbi Chia bar Ami Mishmei de Ula. That Rabbi Chia bar Ami said in the name of Ula, Shlosha Oros Hein. There are three hides. There are three stages in the process of preparing hides, and these are they. One is called matzah, one is called chefa, and one is called diphthera. If you didn't know that before, you know it now. Let's take a look at each of them. So there's going to be there's a few different types of treatments apparently that it takes to get hides ready for working with. So one is a salting process, which we'll see the Hebrew words in a minute. There's a salting process. There's a treatment that involves a flour solution, and then there is a treatment that involves gall nuts. So let's take a look. So these different terms, matzah, chefa, and diphthera, relate to the different points in the treatment process. So matzah, kamash ma'of. Matzah is given its name because it's like it sounds. It's not been treated with anything. In the same way that matzah doesn't have anything added to it, so too this stage in the tanning process has not had anything added to it. The lo maliach, it's not being treated with salt. The lo kamiach, and it's not being treated with flour. The lo apitz, and it's not being treated with gall nuts. The kama shiora. So how much would you have to be carrying out on Shabbos before you are liable? God bless you. Hani Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda taught Kedei Latzur bo Mishkoles Katana, enough to be able to make to wrap around a small weight. The kama, and how much is that? Amar Abai Riva de Pumpadisa. It is a quarter of, as it tells us here, of a litra in the system of weights used in Pumpadita, which is a city, a big city in Babylon. So we're going to see that this is a bigger size. So if you were carrying out animal hides at this stage of the process, you would need to be taking out that amount before you would be chayav, before you would be liable. Chefa, what about the stage of chefa? Demaliach, it's been salted, v'lo kameach, v'lo apitz, but it's not been treated with flour and it's not been treated with gall nuts. The kama shior, and how much would you have to be carrying out? Kiditnan, or kadei lasos kamir. This would be like we saw in our Mishnah. The amount to be carrying out is enough to make a pouch for an amulet. Diphthera, what about diphthera? What is that? The maliach v'kamiach, it's been salted and it's been treated with flour. V'lo apitz, and it hasn't been treated with gall nuts. The kama shiora, and how much would its measurement be? Kadei lichtav alav esaget. It would be enough to be able to write a bill of divorce. Katani mihas. We learn nonetheless when we're talking about matzah. Kadei latzor bo mishkalis katana. It's enough to be able to wrap around a small weight. Va'amar Abaye riva da pumbadisa. And Abaye explained to us that is a quarter of a liter in the measurements used in pumpadita. Well, that's if that's the case, then we're saying that there are different amounts, because we said by the next piece of leather that it would be enough to make an amulet. So why do we have this discrepancy in amount? And the Gemara answers Hasam Bishula. Over there, it's referring to hide that is not yet fit for tanning. It is a wet hide and is only suitable for wrapping around a weight. However, once it's already gone on in the tanning process, then it would be useful to make an amulet. So what we're saying all along, we're constantly showing that if it doesn't have the ability to be used for a particular thing, or a person would not have any care or would not have any use for a piece of whatever material in whatever size we're talking about, there has to be a threshold where it becomes useful and where it becomes commonly used for what we're talking about. So that is what the Gemara is trying to fine-tune over here. Okay, so we continue. Fahatnan, we have another source. When you appreciate like the web of all of these different sources and how these Amoraim would have had their fingers on the pulse of all of these Mishnayos and would just be bringing them in from all over the place. It's you can appreciate the scholarship that lies behind all of it. You know, we're not sitting here thinking, but hang on, there was a Mishnah over there, there was a Barasa over there. Obviously, with time, that can come to a person, but you can appreciate the profundity of the details of the minutiae as they try and say, you know, if you think about it, you know, you can sometimes have like those difficult children, right? I would never know what this is like, but you know, you say something one day and then you change the rule the next day, or even after a week, or even after a month, and then your child's like, I don't understand, but you said last time that it was that you weren't going to let me because of this, and now you're saying I'm not allowed because of this, but that's not fair. Like, why don't you keep changing your mind, changing it, right? So that's kind of like what's going on over here, isn't it? We've got a situation where we're trying to come up and be able to say with certainty and be able to say with conviction what the appropriate halacha should be. But each time we try and do that, someone says, but hang on a minute, you're changing your mind over here. Which way is it? And we're thinking to ourselves, okay, we're talking about like the tiniest amount of material. Like, what difference does it make? But there you go. When you are seeking truth and when you are trying to hold your reputations on the line, isn't it? Because even if you're off by a tiny fraction, right, you could end up exposing the whole system as problematic. You know, we give him an inch and he'll take a mile type thing, you know. So the Gemara is going to such an extent to fine tune what these tiny little measurements are, because everything is in the balance over here. You have to be consistent, you have to be authentic, you have to be real, and you have to be emistic. So it's quite cool when you view this sugya in that way, because you could say like, oh, come on, we're literally arguing about a centimeter of material. A centimeter of material makes all the difference if you've got sources all over the place that don't add up. So that's what we're doing over here. We're trying to make sure that everything is adding up and in its place. So the Gemara then challenges and says, "V'hatanan, we've got another Mishnah. Habeged, that when we're talking about the minimum size of different garments to be able to contract tumah, it's a similar concept. The amount of material in question has to have some kind of use, right? So habeged shlosha or shlosha. When it comes to a garment, it must be at least 3 handbreadths by 3 handbreadths to contract this type of tumah. Hasak, when it comes to sackcloth, daled al daled, it must be 4 by 4. Ha'or, hello, when it comes to animal hide, it must be hay by hay. It must be 5 by 5. What? That's different. Mapat Zvav al Vav, and then it continues to quote it. Mapat, when it comes to the amount of a reed mat, it must be 6 by 6. Bein the midras, bein the maze. Whether we're talking about tumah that's contracted through stepping on it, or whether we're talking about tumah that's contracted through a dead body, those are the measurements. V'tani Allah habeged v'hasad v'haor kishir l'tumah kashir l'hotzah. And we learned on this particular Mishnah, and we said that the amount that we are talking about to be able to contract tumah is the same amount that you would have to be carrying before you are liable for the malacha of hotzah. So we've seen, or should be 5 by 5. Can you see what an immensely huge question and challenge that is? Gemara answers, Hahu b'kutuvla. Gemara answers that source is actually referring to kortuvla, which is hide. I'll just read it off here. Hide that was tanned in a manner that rendered it unfit for writing or wrapping, and so it would be used for covering vessels and other similar uses. Right? Basically, it's not the same type of leather. It's not the same type of hide that we are talking about. That's why the measurements are different. You wouldn't be able to use it for milk, for manipulating it into a pouch for an amulet. You wouldn't be able to use it for writing a bill of divorce. The only use it would have, because it was so tough, was as a cover for furniture. And so you wouldn't be using it for these other uses. And that, my friends, is why the measurements are different. You would need to have a 5 by 5 when it comes to that particular type of that particular type of hide, because it just wouldn't be usable or helpful otherwise. So now we go into Amud Bet. We go into the second side of our daf today, and now we look at cloth. How much parchment do you need to be carrying out on Shabbos? What is the useful size of parchment? So the Mishnah tells us, "Kadei lichtov alav parsha ketana." It's enough to be able to write a small portion. What is that small portion? It is the portion of Shema that would be written onto a scroll, and it would be rolled up and put into our phylacteries. What are phylacteries? Oh, tefillin. Yeah. So that's the amount that the Mishnah tells us at this point. And the Gemara challenges us again. Uraminahu klav uduchsustus. Just for by way of introduction, how do you create any type of parchment to be able to write anything on, right? Sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzahs. What are we talking about? Is it paper? No, it's not paper. It's actually made from animal hide. And there's different layers to animal hide that would be used for different things, right? So if you can imagine an animal, everyone close their eyes and imagine a cow. When you look at the cow from the outside, you have got the fur. Do cows have fur? They have hair. I think they've got hair, right? Whatever you would call the fibrous substance on the backs of cows, I think I would call it hair. I don't think I would call it fur. But anyway, their outer skin layer is one side of the animal hide, and so if we were to peel that off, yeah. So now you've got the side with all of the animal skin color, yeah, and then on the other side you'd have another layer. Okay, and the way that they would prepare animal hides, they would actually split that into two, right? So now you're going to have the inner piece, which has got two sides to it, and you've got the outer piece, which has got two sides to it, yeah? Is it clear that far, right? So if we were to take the top layer, so on one side you're going to have the animal skin that you would see externally, and on this side you would have, I guess, what you would call the inner part of the outer layer, and that is called dursustus. And then you have got the inner layer, yeah, which you've peeled off. So this layer wouldn't necessarily be used, but I've actually got it the wrong way. Let's try again. So outer hair over there, and this side would be called cloth, and this is what will be processed into creating the paper to be able to write on. Then you would have the inner layer. This is the bit that you've peeled off the animal, but this is the bit that would be turned into dursustus. Okay, so you can imagine that's your outer layer, that's your inner layer. The two pieces in between, this one would be called klaf, and this one would be called duchsustus. I hope that's moderately clear. Anyway, so these would be used for different things, and that is why we have the following challenge, because we've just said that klaf, okay, which would be here, it has to be enough to be able to write a parsha katana, and now we're saying the following: klaf uduchsustus kedei lichtav alav mezuzah. That the amount that you would have to be dealing with over here is enough to write a mezuzah. Well, these are different sizes. My mezuzah, so the Gemara says, oh no, but what did we mean when we said mezuzah? And so the Gemara answers, mezuzah shevet tefillin. It's actually the mezuzah in the tefillin. So the Gemara asks, do we ever even call the text that goes inside the tefillin? Do we actually ever call it mezuzah? I've never heard this before, says the Gemara. And the Gemara answers, yes, we do. Vahatanya, in the Baraisa, Ritsuos tefillin, the straps of tefillin, imha tefillin, with the tefillin, matamos es hayadayim, they are able to render hands spiritually impure. They are able to render them tameh. Bifnei atzman, but if they are on their own, if they are separate, you've got the batim, the house of the tefillin, you've got the straps separate, aim matamos es hayadayim, then they would not. Okay. Don't worry about that too much if that's confused you. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Hanogeya biritzua tahor ad sheyiga b'ketzitza. A person who would touch the straps, even while they're attached, would remain tahor ad sheyagia b'ketzitza, until he actually touched the box of the tefillin. Okay. Rabbi Zakkai Mishma Omer. Rabbi Zakkai said in Rabbi Shimon's name, Tahor ad sheyiga b'mezuzah atzma. There it is. One remains ritually pure until he touches the mezuzah itself. And so apparently we have a source where mezuzah is called tefillin, or tefillin is called mezuzah. There you go. There you have it. V'hamid ktani sefer. Now hang on a minute. The Gemara asks, from the later part of what we've just been reading, not from that section, but the source that we're dealing with, our Mishnah, that we are currently exploring our way through. Klaf, when it comes to parchment, okay, that when it comes to parchment, we have to be writing the amount that's needed for the smallest parsha in the tefillin, which is Shema Yisrael. Miklal dereisha b'mezuzah atzma askina, which would mean that the reisha, the first clause, is dealing with an actual mezuzah. None of this, oh, mezuzah really means tefillin business. So it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. We can't really say that this evidence that tefillin can also be called a mezuzah, it doesn't add up in our Mishnah over here. Hachikatani. So that's why we have to have a revised teaching. Klaf duchsustus shiurin bekama. When it comes to klaf and duchsustus shiurin bekama, how much are we talking about? Duchsustus kedei lichtov alav mezuzah. The duchsustus would have to be enough to be able to write a mezuzah, and the klaf would have to be kedei lichtov alav parsha katana shevet tefillin shema Yisrael. It would have to be enough to be able to write the minimum amount of Shema Yisrael. That is our revised teaching. It's not actually saying that they have the same measurement. They do have different measurements. And now we continue. Amarav, duchsustus harehika klaf. Duchsustus has the same status as parchment. What do we mean? Ma klaf kosvin alav tefillin. Just like klaf can be used for writing tefillin, af duchsustus kosvin alav tefillin. So to this duchsustus type of parchment could also be used for writing tefillin. Tnan, we learn in a Mishnah, klaf kedei lichtov parsha katana shebetefillin shishma Yisrael, that the Mishnah teaches us how much klaf, enough to be able to write the portion for the tefillin. So that would imply to us klaf in duchsustus lo, that when it comes to klaf, we can use it for tefillin, and when it comes to duchsustus, we can't use it. So the Gemara answers, no, don't worry about it. The Gemara answers that the Mishnah is referring to le mitzvah. The ideal way to be able to write your tefillin is on klaf, is on parchment. But actually, if you did write on duchsustus, you would be okay. Tashma, come in here. Halacha la Moshe misinai tefillin ala klaf. Mezuzah la duchsustus. We have a malacha, sorry, not a malacha, we have a halacha transmitted to Moses from Sinai that tefillin should be written on parchment, on klaf, and a mezuzah should be written on duchsustus. And so it now explains to us what those places are. Klaf b'makom basar, that klaf is on the side that faces the flesh, right? So as we said, that's the outer layer of the animal skin, and this is the side that faces the flesh, and that would be klaf. And when it comes to duchsustus, b'makom seyar, that it's the side that faces the hair. There you go. It's not called fur, right? And then it goes on to say limitless, that this is the ideal way to do it, but or the optimum way to do it, but you wouldn't necessarily be infringing on anything if you did it on another type of piece. Or would you? Because the Gemara says, "Va'atanya shina pasul," that if you deviate from this halacha, then it would render the parchment invalid. And the Gemara answers, a mezuzah. That would only invalidate it if you're writing a mezuzah. A mezuzah can't be written on klaf. It can only be written on duchsustus. Yeah? But if you're writing tefillin, then it could be written on either. Okay? But then ba'atanya. But we have a baraisa, shina bazeh bazeh pasul, that if you deviated in either instance, then you would be rendering the parchment invalid. Idi ve'idi amazuzah. Really, really, both of these things are referring to a mezuzah. V'ha dekasvinhu aklaf b'makom seyar, and the additional invalidation is a case where one deviated and wrote it on parchment on the side that faced the hair. Inami aduchsustus b'makom basar, or alternatively, it is where you are writing it on duchsustus, on the side that faced the flesh. So it's talking about where you're basically getting your parchments mixed up and doing everything wrong. That is when you could be invalidating it. Or if you want, say shina bazeh bazeh, that this concept of deviating in this one or in that one, Tanaihi, it is a matter of dispute for the Tanaim of the Mishnah. The Tanya, Shina bazeh bazeh pasul, as it says that if they deviated in either of these, then it would be invalid. Rabbi Acha machshir, Rabbi Acha would say that it is kosher still, Mishum Rabbi Acha bar Rabbi Chanina, as he quotes in the name of Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. Va'amri la Mishum Rabbi Yaakov bar Rabbi Chanina, or maybe he was quoting in the name of Rabbi Yaakov bar Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Acha would say that it's still kosher. And Rav Papa Amar, Rav Da'amar Katana Devei Menashe. Rav Papa says that Rav, who had just said to us, what did Rav say to us? That duchsustus is like klaf. That was a few lines already ago. He's holding like Devei Menashe, the Academy of Menashe. Tana Devei Menashe, Kasva al Hanyar. If he wrote on grass paper, for alamatlis, or he wrote on cloth, kasula, then he would be rendering it invalid. Al haklaf va'al gavil. If he was writing it on parchment, or he was writing it on gavil, which it tells us over here is parchment, is hide that was treated with gulnuts, va'al duchsustus, or he was writing on duchsustus, then kashera, then it would be kosher. That was Rabbi Menashe. That was Devei Menashe's opinion, the Academy of Menashe. That's who Rav was quoting like. Okay, so the Gemara asks, Kasva Mai, what's he writing over here? And the Gemara answers, Ilema mezuzah. If you want to say that he's writing a mezuzah aklavmi kasvina, would you actually write a mezuzah on this klav? Ella loved tefillin, so we have to say that he's referring to tefillin. But according to that, do we write tefillin on gavil? Do we write this on this parchment, on this animal hide that's been treated with gulnut? So what's he actually talking about? What's this Devei Menashe actually talking about? The Sefer Torah. He's actually talking about writing on a Torah scroll. And let's say that this supports the following opinion of Rav, Kayotse Ba, in a similar vein, tefillin shibalu, tefillin that have worn out, the Sefer Torah Shabbat and the Torah scroll that has worn out, eight osin mahen mezuzah. You can't go taking the worn out parchment from a Sefer Torah and start writing a mezuzah with it. Because you can't go and take something that has a very high level of kedusha, like a Sefer Torah, and then start writing something like a mezuzah, which has a lower level of sanctity of kedusha. Tama de'ein maridin. The reason that we are seeing over here is because you can't downgrade. Ha maridin osin. But if you were one second. Oh, yes, there we go. Tama de'ein maridin. So the reason is because we don't downgrade. Ha maridin. But if we were allowed to downgrade, then osin. Then theoretically, you would be able to write your tefillin, you'd be able to write your mezuzah on this different type of parchment. So the Gemara then says, Tichsiva amai. What are we talking about? What are we trying to write these tefillin on? Lav tichsiva adursustus. Are we not trying to write tefillin on dursustus? Lo. Tichsiva ala klaf. We're talking about trying to write it on klaf. So the Gemara asks again, mezuzah klaf mi kasvinan? Do we write mezuzah on klaf? And the Gemara answers to us, yes, we actually do. V'hatanya kasva ala klaf ala niyar v'ala maknis basula. But we've got a variety that taught us if you wrote a mezuzah on parchment, or you wrote it on paper, or you wrote it on cloth, it would be invalid. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Rabbi Meir haya kosva ala klaf mipnei shemishtameret. Rabbi Meir would actually write it on parchment as it would preserve it better. And so what we see from there is that mezuzah could be written on parchment. And so what we've been talking about so far would not necessarily be helpful. And now that you've arrived at this opinion that a mezuzah can be written on dursustus and on klaf, then according to Rav, you could say that you would not say that dursustus has the same halacha as parchment. Ella, what you would say instead is ema klaf harihu kedursustus. That klaf is just like dursustus. You wouldn't compare dursustus to klaf. You would compare klaf to dursustus. Ma dursustus kosvin alav mezuzah. Just like dursustus, you can write mezuzahs on it. Af klaf kosvin alav mezuzah. So too, klaf, which is the parchment, you can write a mezuzah on that. Quite technical, quite tricky, but that's all we have for today. So shkoyach, and let's get this sharing off and the broadcast off, and we hope you'll join us next week for Daf Yomi.